The emotional chess game. Every one of us, at some point, has been emotionally cornered. That moment when someone close to you says, "If you really cared about me, you'd do this." It's subtle, calculated, and leaves a sting that logic can't easily remove. That's emotional blackmail. It's the art of twisting love, guilt, and fear into tools of control. And it's far more common than we like to admit. The truth is, manipulators don't need armies or thrones. They just need your empathy, your hesitation, your desire to be seen as good. This video isn't about becoming cold or heartless. It's about recognizing when compassion is being weaponized. Emotional blackmailers operate like chess players, always thinking 2 moves ahead. They rely on your emotional investment to make you fold first. Understanding their playbook doesn't make you cruel, it makes you conscious. Because awareness is power, and power used wisely is the one thing a manipulator can't stand against. Machiavelli, the political philosopher whose name has become shorthand for cunning, once wrote that it is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. But what happens when fear and love merge into one toxic cycle? In the emotional battlefield, the modern Machiavellian doesn't wear a crown. They text you, guilt trip you, ghost you, and reel you back in. This video is about breaking that cycle. It's about flipping the script on emotional blackmail and learning how to win without losing your soul. 1. What emotional blackmail really is. Emotional blackmail isn't just manipulation, it's manipulation with receipts. It's when someone uses your emotions, usually guilt, fear, or obligation, to get what they want, even at the expense of your boundaries. Psychotherapist Susan Forward, who coined the term, defined it as a dynamic where one person uses fear, obligation, and guilt to control another. The acronym is fitting, FOG, because that's exactly how it feels. A fog that clouds your judgment and makes you second-guess your reality. Unlike open conflict, emotional blackmail hides behind emotional intimacy. The manipulator doesn't threaten your body, they threaten your sense of self. If you leave me, I'll fall apart. You're the only one who understands me. After all I've done for you, this is how you repay me? Each of these lines is a trap wrapped in sentiment. It's not an argument. It's an emotional ambush. The blackmailer paints themselves as the victim, forcing you into the role of rescuer, even when you're the one being drained. The genius and the cruelty of emotional blackmail lies in its subtlety. Unlike physical coercion, it's invisible. There are no bruises, no clear proof, no easy exit. Victims often don't realize they're being manipulated until they're emotionally exhausted and questioning their sanity. That's what makes it so effective and so dangerous. Understanding this dynamic is the first step toward reclaiming your agency. You can't win a game you don't realize you're playing. 2. The Machiavellian mindset behind it. To understand emotional blackmail, you have to understand Machiavellian psychology. The belief that power is the highest currency, and control is the only way to keep it. In The Prince, Niccolò Machiavelli argued that rulers must sometimes act immorally to maintain order. The ends justify the means, he implied, which sounds ruthless, but also oddly familiar in human relationships. Emotional manipulators operate on that same logic. If the outcome protects their ego or secures your compliance, then any tactic, guilt, tears, gaslighting, is fair play. But unlike political rulers, emotional blackmailers don't seek to govern nations. They seek to govern people. Their domain is your emotional landscape, your guilt, your empathy, your loyalty. They weaponize your virtues against you. To a Machiavellian mind, vulnerability is weakness, and compassion is currency. They learn to trade on your emotional investment, turning care into collateral. It's not that they don't feel. It's that they've learned feeling can be used strategically. Yet Machiavelli himself wasn't advocating cruelty for cruelty's sake. He was describing power dynamics as they really are, not as we wish them to be. The same awareness that makes a manipulator dangerous can also make you powerful, if you use it ethically. When you start seeing manipulation as a form of strategy, you stop being blindsided by it. You stop taking emotional traps personally. You realize that understanding human motives doesn't make you cynical, it makes you free. 3. The psychology of guilt and fear. Emotional blackmail thrives on two of the most powerful human emotions, guilt and fear. Guilt convinces us we've done something wrong, even when we haven't. Fear convinces us that if we don't comply, we'll lose something: love, approval, peace, or security. Manipulators know that people who care deeply often care too much about being good. They exploit that inner need for moral validation, twisting it until you start policing your own boundaries. The blackmailer doesn't need to yell. They just have to sigh, withdraw, or say, "I guess you don't care." In psychology, this is called negative reinforcement. When someone threatens emotional withdrawal or disapproval, your brain responds as if you're facing a real danger. The amygdala, your threat detection center, fires up, pushing you into panic mode. You'll do almost anything to stop that discomfort. That's why guilt-based manipulation feels so powerful. It hijacks your survival wiring. You're not just trying to make peace, you're trying to feel safe again. And that's exactly what the manipulator counts on. But here's the flip. Once you recognize that guilt and fear are tools being used on you, they lose their grip. Awareness rewires the script. The next time someone tries to weaponize guilt, pause and ask yourself, what would happen if I didn't give in? You'll see that the fear they project isn't real. It's a mirage meant to control your decisions. Machiavelli said that fear is a sharper motivator than love, but love, when it's conscious and grounded, can't be controlled. It's time to take your emotions off the battlefield and reclaim them as your allies, not your enemies. 4. Why empaths are prime targets. If emotional blackmailers are predators, empaths are their favorite prey. Empaths don't just feel their own emotions, they absorb others. They sense tension before words are spoken, and they instinctively want to fix it. That sensitivity is a gift, but in the wrong hands it becomes a leash. Manipulators quickly learn that the more an empath cares, the easier it is to twist that care into control. You're so understanding, they'll say, right before asking you to compromise yourself for their comfort. This isn't weakness, it's wiring. Empaths are built to connect. Their nervous systems mirror others' pain, which can make them feel responsible for emotions that aren't theirs. When a manipulator says, "You're making me feel bad," an empath's instinct is to apologize, not realizing that they've just accepted ownership of someone else's feelings. That's the emotional sleight of hand, convincing you that managing another person's emotions is your job. Once that belief takes hold, you're no longer acting from empathy. You're acting from guilt. But here's the truth that flips the script. Genuine empathy doesn't mean self-erasure. You can care deeply without being controlled. Boundaries don't make you cold, they make your compassion sustainable. Machiavelli wrote that rulers must learn the ways of beasts and men, meaning they must understand both human softness and animal instinct. For the empath, this lesson translates into learning the art of selective compassion, knowing when to open your heart and when to guard your energy. Because not everyone who cries deserves your comfort. Some are just rehearsing their next manipulation. 5. The modern manipulator digital power plays. Emotional blackmail has evolved. It's no longer confined to private conversations or handwritten guilt trips. In the digital era, manipulation has gone public, subtle, performative, and algorithmically amplified. Social media has become the new kingdom where modern Machiavellians rule. They don't issue decrees, they post statuses. They don't demand loyalty, they fish for it with vague posts, emotional bait, and attention hooks designed to trigger your response. Guess I know who really cares. Some people only love you when it's convenient. Each of these lines is a power move disguised as vulnerability. The digital manipulator uses visibility as leverage. They understand that the public eye creates pressure. By airing emotional grievances online, they recruit your guilt in front of an audience. You're not just managing your relationship, you're managing your reputation. It's emotional blackmail. 2. Psychological warfare fought with likes, comments, and silence. Ghosting, breadcrumbing, and passive-aggressive stories are all modern tactics of emotional control. They keep you guessing, reacting, and checking your phone, because as long as you're anxious, they're in control. And the scariest part? Technology rewards it. The more dramatic the post, the more engagement it gets. The manipulator learns that emotional chaos equals digital currency. They may not read Machiavelli, but they live by his logic, control perception, and you control the narrative. The counter move is emotional detachment, not apathy but clarity. Don't play on their stage. Don't perform your pain. Detach, observe, and respond only from a place of calm. That's the one thing no algorithm and no manipulator can predict. 6. Learning from Machiavelli, strategy without cruelty. Machiavelli's name has become a synonym for manipulation, but if you read the prince closely, he wasn't glorifying deceit. He was describing reality. He believed that power, once obtained, must be maintained through strategy, awareness, and adaptability. The same principle applies to emotional survival. You can learn from Machiavelli without becoming heartless. You can think strategically without turning into a manipulator, because real strength isn't about domination, it's about control over yourself. To counter emotional blackmail, you need a shift in mindset, stop reacting, and start observing. Manipulators thrive on impulsive emotional responses. Every time you defend yourself, explain, or justify, you feed their power. Machiavelli advised rulers to appear merciful, faithful, humane, upright, and religious, but to keep control of their inner intentions. Translated to emotional dynamics, that means you can stay kind, but you don't owe anyone access to your emotional core. You can smile, but remain aware of the game being played. That's not deceit, it's discernment. When you start thinking this way, you're not playing dirty. You're learning emotional strategy. You stop being the predictable empath and become a calm observer. You know when to speak, when to walk away, and when silence itself is your most powerful move. Machiavelli understood that perception is half of power. The more you appear unbothered, the less ammunition a manipulator has. They can't guilt trip someone who won't engage in the guilt. They can't scare someone who's learned that fear is a tool, not a truth. 7. Building emotional armor. If emotional blackmail is a war of feelings, then boundaries are your armor. But most people misunderstand boundaries. They think of them as walls. In reality, boundaries are filters. They let in what's healthy and keep out what's toxic. Building emotional armor doesn't mean shutting people out. It means becoming unshakable from within. The manipulator's greatest weapon is your emotional reactivity, so your greatest defense is emotional regulation. The calmer you are, the weaker their control becomes. Start by recognizing your emotional triggers. What words or actions make you instantly defensive or guilty? Those are your entry points, the places where manipulation can hook you. Once you identify them, slow down your responses. When a blackmailer says, "After everything I've done for you," take a breath before reacting. Pause. Silence is power. In that pause, your brain shifts from emotional reaction to logical analysis. You start seeing the tactic, not just the feeling. That's emotional armor in action. The second layer of protection is detachment without disconnection. You can listen to someone's pain without taking responsibility for it. You can acknowledge their feelings without fixing them. That balance, empathy with clarity, is what makes emotional boundaries sustainable. Machiavelli said that a wise ruler must learn to act according to necessity. In emotional terms, that means doing what protects your peace, not what pleases others. Because your energy is your territory, and every manipulator is in some way trying to occupy it. 8. Turning defense into offense. There comes a point when defense isn't enough. You need to shift the energy. Emotional blackmailers thrive when you're reacting. But when you stop reacting and start leading, they lose the upper hand. Turning defense into offense doesn't mean manipulation, it means strategy. You learn to anticipate their moves and redirect the conversation. You stop explaining yourself and start asking questions that expose the pattern. Instead of saying, "I didn't mean to upset you," you say, "Why does my boundary make you uncomfortable?" That flips the dynamic instantly. The moment you stop defending and start inquiring, the manipulator feels the loss of control. They'll try to pull you back into the emotional fog, but you stay grounded. You use calm logic where they expect guilt. You use silence where they expect reaction. Every time you refuse to play their emotional game, you rewrite the script. Over time, this shift creates something powerful: respect. Not because the manipulator suddenly changes, but because they recognize that you won't be moved by emotional threats anymore. And here's where Machiavelli's brilliance truly applies. He wrote, "Men in general judge more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see but few can feel." Meaning, people respond more to how you carry yourself than to what you say. When you carry yourself with calm certainty, you project quiet authority. You're no longer the emotional responder. You're the strategist. The manipulator will either adapt or drift away, because the game only works when you keep playing it. Conclusion: mastery without malice. In the end, emotional blackmail isn't just about control, it's about fear. The manipulator fears losing power, the target fears losing love. That's the invisible contract that keeps the game alive. Breaking it requires more than anger or confrontation. It requires awareness, discipline, and self-respect. Once you see the pattern for what it is, you can't unsee it. The guilt loses its sting. The fear loses its teeth. You start realizing that peace doesn't come from pleasing people. It comes from understanding where your power begins and where their influence ends. This is what I call mastery without malice. The ability to move through life strategically, like Machiavelli's ideal ruler, but without cruelty. You understand the rules of manipulation, yet you choose not to play by them. You know how to protect yourself without hardening your heart. You become the calm in the storm, not because you're indifferent, but because you've learned that not every emotional invitation deserves an "please reply." That balance between intelligence and empathy is where real strength lives. Machiavelli once wrote, "The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves." Emotional mastery means being both. You stay perceptive enough to see manipulation coming, but strong enough to hold your ground when it does. You no longer fear being misunderstood or disliked, because you know your worth isn't up for negotiation. Emotional blackmailers will always exist, in families, friendships, workplaces, and relationships. But their power fades the moment you stop participating. When you stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. When you stop proving your loyalty to those who weaponize your compassion. When you stop carrying the emotional weight that was never yours to bear. That's when you flip the script. Not by becoming cold, but by becoming conscious. So, in this modern age of silent wars and smiling manipulators, remember this. Kindness without boundaries is self-destruction. Strategy without empathy is tyranny. The real art lies in combining both. To think like a strategist and love like a human being. That's how you win the inner game Machiavelli never wrote about. The one fought not for kingdoms but for peace of mind.